the secret consumption of the soul's vitality. You feel it, don't you? That sense of being drained after conversations that felt harmless. That strange exhaustion after giving to someone who never really asked but always expected. That creeping feeling that you are never alone in your own body, that your emotions might not even belong to you. These are not exaggerations of sensitivity. These are not overreactions. These are the whispers of your unconscious trying to tell you something is feeding. Now let us descend into the symbolic, for in dreams, this truth is often shown more clearly than in waking life. I once treated a woman, an empath, who dreamed that she was a golden bird trapped in a glass dome. Around her circled crows, patient and watching every time she sang. The dome cracked slightly, and a crow would drink from the light, leaking through the cracks. She awoke weeping, unable to explain why. Do you see it? The empath in her gift of expression allows leakage of psychic light. The crow's unconscious archetypes of shadow are not evil, but they are hungry. And the song her giving her shining creates fractures through which the light escapes. The dome is her psychic boundary, or rather her fragile attempt at one. Empath often mistake openness for love. But love without form is not divine. It is disillusion when you say yes to everything. When you hold everyone's grief, when you merge without discernment, you become food. And I must tell you even more urgently, this feeding is often welcomed by your shadow. Yes, the part of you that believes you must be useful to be lovable, she is complicit. The part of you that grew up in chaos and found meaning in calming others, he is complicit. The part that was once neglected, rejected, ignored, who discovered that feeling others gave her a role, a name, an identity. She will hand you over to these feeders again and again just to not feel worthless. This is how the cycle is perpetuated, not through force but through unconscious agreement. Now let us go deeper still. What is this light I speak of? It is not simply kindness, nor sweetness, nor goodness. It is far older than that. It is what I called the newness, the radiant pulse of the self that longs to be made manifest in the world. When the empire shines authentically, not performatively, what is shining is not just personality. It is the soul's radiant instinct to heal, to unify, and reveal meaning. But herein lies the danger to those without access to their own light. Yours is intoxicating. To the unintegrated, your presence feels like salvation. To the narcissist, the abuser, the manipulator, you light as a source, not a person. As a source, something to tap into, to draw from, to control. And they will not come with thanks. They come with stories of helplessness, with charm, with neediness disguised as affection, with chaos disguised as crisis. They will tell you, I can't do this without you. And you will believe them because your archetypal wound is abandonment by the sacred. Let us speak plainly. You are likely the child who felt everything too deeply, who sensed what was unspoken, who played telepath to your own parents, who learned to anticipate moods like a sailor watches waves, always ready to adjust the sails to avoid the storm. That child did not become an empath. That child was forced to awaken early, and now you are that same child in a bigger body, still scanning, still over-functioning, still believing that if you are attuned enough, you can prevent rejection, that if you give enough, you will be kept, that if you suffer quietly, you will finally be seen. But this is the oldest betrayal, because the more you give from emptiness, the more you are drained, and the more you are drained, the more you confuse depletion for purpose. You must understand your gift is not your sacrifice. Your sensitivity is not martyrdom. Your intuition is not a leash for others to pull. If you keep giving what no one truly receives, you are not being noble. You are being consumed. And if this frightens you, good. It should. Because until you recognize that your light is not an endless fountain, you will keep attracting those who never learn to shine for themselves. You will keep dating the wounded, who only want your empathy, but never your truth. You will keep befriending the broken who idolize you, until they resent you. You will keep mothering the immature, who say you are magic, until they drain you dry, and blame you for their thirst. And you will call this love, but it is possession. You are being possessed not by demons, no, but by ancient archetypes of unworthiness, saviorhood, and sacrificial identity that have colonized your psyche like parasites of meaning. You see, the ego of the empath often believes she is above shadow because she feels so much. She thinks she knows more because she suffers more. She believes she loves deeper, but this is illusion. The empath's shadow is the need to be needed even at the cost of being whole. And so you allow yourself to be leached not because you are weak, but because your identity is intertwined with this very dynamic. It's not their fault alone. The feeders, the users, the takers, they only enter through the doors you leave open. And I say this not to shame you, but to awaken you, because you are not just the light, you are also the guardian of that light. And now the time has come to choose. Will you continue leaking your soul in silent hopes of being loved? Or will you at last integrate your own darkness and learn to protect what is sacred within you? You may not realize it yet, but the greatest danger to the empath is not the narcissist, the manipulator, or the chaotic lover. The true danger is you, or rather the version of you that still believes suffering is synonymous with sanctity. That emotional hunger in others is your responsibility. That exhaustion is proof of your usefulness. This is the shadow's most elegant deception. It whispers, "You're only valuable when you're being drained." I've seen this time and again. The dreamer who arrives on my couch weeping because no one truly sees her. But when asked what she needs, she has no language. Only a catalog of what others need. She is fluent in their despair and mute in her own. This is not empathy. This is dissociation in disguise. Your light, if not protected, becomes currency for others to spend, and over time you forget it was ever yours. The unconscious makes no moral distinctions between saint and slave, between helper and hostage. It sees only energy, patterns, repetition. And when you repeat the same pattern, overgiving, overfeeing, overextending, the unconscious assumes it must be the path to wholeness. But what it doesn't see is that you are burning your soul to keep others warm. Now let us consider the archetypal structure beneath this. At the heart of the empath is the archetype of the wounded healer, the Miss of Kaiwan, the center who could heal all wounds except his own. His pain made him wise, but it also made him lonely. And so many empaths carry this same pattern. You are brilliant at understanding the brokenness in others, but remain blind to the cracks in yourself. Why? Because to face your own wound would mean turning the light inward and discovering the depth of your own unmet needs, your own grief, your own wage at not being chosen. No. Being protected, not being heard. It is easier, is it not, to heal others than to sit with the child inside you who still believes love must be earned. But your healing cannot come through projection. You cannot save your father by loving another wounded man. You cannot redeem your mother by rescuing your friends. You cannot rewrite your childhood through acts of compassion for the emotionally unavailable. Healing begins when you stop abandoning yourself to earn belonging. Empathy is sacred. Yes, but sacred things must be guarded. In ancient temples, only the high priest or priestess could approach the inner sanctum. Why not? Because the sacred was dangerous, but because the uninitiated were unworthy to touch what they did not understand. You dear empath have no gatekeepers. You allow anyone into your sanctum. Anyone who is sad, anyone who smiles, anyone who flutters, you confuse openness with enlightenment. But true spiritual maturity is not boundaryless. It is discerning. Discernment is the lost virtue of the empath, the ability to feel and still say no, to witness pain and not absorb it, to hold space without dissolving in it. This is what separates the healer from the host. Age. The modern world celebrates the empath as if it is an identity badge, a trending archetype. But I tell you, most self-proclaimed empaths are actually emotionally ensnared. They have confused intuition with hypervigilance, compassion with codependency, and giving with self-eraser. You must be willing to face this possibility that your gift is entangled with your trauma, that your ability to read rooms may come not from the divine but from childhood survival, that your sense of others' emotions may be the residual echo of a nervous system trained to scan for danger. I do not say this to dismiss your gift, but to liberate it. When you separate your empathy from your wounding, your light becomes clear. It stops flickering in the winds of other storms. It becomes a beacon, not a buffet. Let us now turn to the language of dreams again. One patient dreamt she lived in a house with no doors, only windows. People came and went freely. Some stole her furniture. Some climbed through a kitchen. One even entered her bedroom and whispered, "You don't deserve privacy." She tried to speak, but no sound came, only weeping. When she awoke, she said, "I felt like a ghost in my own home. Do you see T?" His house is the psyche of the empath without boundaries, a place where everyone is welcomed, but no one is filtered, where the soul is accessible but undefended, and eventually the self begins to fade. The voice disappears. The needs become invisible. You become a ghost in your own life. To reclaim your light, you must become the architect of that house. You must build doors, locks, walls. You must decide who enters and who stays outside. And, above all, you must allow your own self to live there fully, loudly, messily, not as a caretaker of everyone else's storms, but as a sovereign being with agency. There is a sacred paradox here. When you shield your light, it shines more brightly. When you refuse to be drained, you gain the strength to truly serve. When you no longer need to be needed, your gifts become sharper, cleaner, unburdened by martyrdom, because light, when preserved, becomes revelation. And make no mistake, those who feed upon you will resist this change. They will say you are cold, that you've changed, that you are selfish. They will call you cruel for finally loving yourself. Let them. Their discomfort is not your burden. It is a sign that the power dynamic is shifting. And this is the final warning I give you. If you do not change the pattern will consume you one day. The empath who never says no wakes up bitter, resentful, unrecognizable. She becomes the very thing she once was, closed, cold, hardened, not because she is evil, but because her light was never meant to be endlessly given without renewal. I do not want that future for you. I want you radiant. I want you wise. I want your light to be an offering, not a sacrifice. But first, you must gather the parts of yourself you've scattered in others, the laughter you gave away to make someone feel better, the peace you surrendered to avoid conflict, the dreams you buried to care for someone who never cared for you. Call them back. All of them. You are not a sponge. You are not a mirror. You are not a remedy for anyone's emptiness. You are a soul, and souls were never meant to be consumed. Now you are beginning to see, are you not, that the path of the empath is not only a sacred one but also a treacherous one. For what is light truly if not that which casts shadows? And what are you if not both the illuminated and the lost? This is not an insult to your gift. It is a reckoning with its cost. You see, your empathy is not just a function of your nervous system. It is a spiritual mechanism, a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the personal and the collective. You are tuned often against your will to the frequency of sorrow that most people ignore. This is why people feel safe around you. Why do they confess too much? Why do they weep in your presence without understanding why? Because you do not merely listen. You receive, and what you receive you carry. But how long can one carry what was never meant to be yours? The unconscious has its own laws, and one of the most powerful among them is reciprocity. In nature, the tree gives oxygen and takes in carbon dioxide. The ocean receives the rivers and returns clouds to the sky. Even the archetypes in their infinite wisdom require an exchange. But the empath, when distorted, gives and gives without ever demanding return. This breaks the laws of psychic balance, and wherever there is imbalance, the psyche demands compensation. That compensation is often illness. Yes, you heard me. The body becomes the voice for the boundaries you never enforced. The fatigue you feel is not laziness. It is soul depletion. The anxiety that creeps in your chest is not random. It is the cry of your neglected self, desperate for you to stop leaking your essence into other people's wounds. The autoimmune disorders, the migraines, the digestive pain, they are not always just biological. They are, sometimes the symptoms of an unguarded temple. Do not dismiss this as mystical exaggeration. I have seen patients who, after finally reclaiming their right to boundaries, healed ailments they carried for decades because the psyche, when chronically violated, will manifest protection by force if you do not claim it by will, and if you continue to live as though your light exists only to soothe others. Eventually, your soul will retreat. You will find yourself numb, disconnected, cynical. You will no longer recognize your own reflection because the mirrors around you were never built to show you only what others needed from you. It is in this crisis that many empaths begin to awaken. They begin to notice the patterns, the friendships that never felt mutual, the relationships built on emotional labor, the sense that people love their presence but not their personhood. This awakening is brute. Al, because it requires the death of your favorite illusion that being good will protect you. No, buying good in the eyes of the unconscious means little. If it means being empty, let me say this clearly. Your light does not exist to prevent abandonment. It exists to illuminate truth, and truth is not always pleasing. There is a reason the mystics withdrew from the noise of the world. There is a reason the prophets wandered alone. There is a reason the true healers walk between realms rather than dwell in the comfort of the crowd. Because light must be cultivated in silence before it is shared in service. But you have tried to be everything to everyone. You have opened the gates wide and called it love. You have allowed your gift to be diluted, polluted, and sometimes even exploited because the fear of being alone felt more unbearable than the pain of being drained. I understand, but I must tell you that aloneliness is not abandonment. It is consecration. You must enter solitude if you are to retrieve your light. You must be willing to disappoint others in order to reappoint yourself as the center of your own being. You must learn to say the most sacred word in the Empire's vocabulary. Yes. No, I will not carry what is not mine. No, I will not merge with someone who does not honor my soul. No, I will not betray myself to feel loved. And yes, this will change everything. People will fall away. But what falls away was never love. It was dependency. You may grieve it. Let yourself. But do not go back, because if you do, the cost will be even greater. The more you know about your own pattern, the more dangerous it becomes to ignore it. Awareness demands responsibility. Now let us speak of protection. Empaths often recoil at the idea of self-protection. They associate it with coldness, with cruelty, with selfishness. But this is the conditioning of the wounded child, not the wisdom of the integrated self. Protection is not a wall. It is a filter. It does not mean closing your heart. It means discerning whose hands are clean enough to touch it. Your light is holy. Treat it as such, not with arrogance but with reverence. There are practices for these rituals, boundaries, energetic hygiene. But the most important one is internal. You must believe you are worth protecting, because until you believe that, nothing will change. You will intellectualize your trauma. You will. I'll read books, attend workshops, quote boundaries on social media, but still leak your essence through the cracks of unconscious agreements. The agreement that says, I'll be whoever you need me to be if you promise not to leave. The agreement that says, if I heal you, maybe someone will finally come heal me. The agreement that says, if I make myself indispensable, maybe I won't feel invisible. These are the real prisons, not the people, the patterns. The psyche repeats what is unhealed. And you, beloved empath, are repeating the scene of your first abandonment over and over again, hoping for a different ending. But you are the ending. You are the one you've been waiting for. You are the one who must say enough. Enough to carrying what was never yours. Enough to performing worthiness. Enough to bleeding so others can live. This is the moment you reclaim your throne, not as queen of suffering or king of self-sacrifice, but as sovereign of your own psychic kingdom. Because light, when it remembers itself, becomes fire, and fire cannot be fed upon. It burns through illusion. It purifies the wound. It illuminates what has been hidden. So reason, you who have been feeding others for. So long rise not as prey but as flame. There is something sacred that happens when an empath ceases to beg for belonging. When the light once dimmed by overgiving begins to burn inward, not outward, when you the once fractured mirror of everyone else's sorrow. Finally, look into yourself and see not pain but presence. This is not the end of empathy. It is the birth of real love. Because until now, what you call love was often a transaction. I'll hold your pain if you let me feel needed. But now you begin to glimpse a love that asks nothing in return. A love that radiates simply because it is not to be recognized, not to be repaid, but because it is your very nature. That is the essence of divine empathy. Fierce, luminous, and sovereign. And in this place, something strange happens. The people who once fed on your softness begin to wither in your presence. Not because you have become cruel, but because your light no longer leaks. It stuns them. It forces them to face their own emptiness. They may call you selfish. Let them. They will try to trigger the old reflexes, guilt, shame, obligation. Let them try. These are echoes of an old script. You are rewriting it now, word by word. Why? You must understand your empathy is no longer available for codependent contracts. And it is here in this a reclamation that the archetype of the wounded healer begins to evolve. For the wounded healer, when unconscious, is a martyr, but when awakened, he becomes a channel for a transformation. Not a sponge, not a fixer, but a vessel. You do not carry pain anymore. You witness it. You allow it to move through, not into you. Like a sacred river that flows but never floods the banks. This is the highest form of empathy, not absorption but alchemical presence. And now we enter the final chamber of this inner sanctum, the mystery beneath the mystery. Why were you chosen to feel so deeply? Why does your heart open to the invisible currents of a room? The unspoken grief in a stranger, the sadness behind someone's smile. It is not because you are cursed, it is because you are initiated. Yes, initiated. Empaths are not born in comfort. They are forged in the fire of emotional neglect, of psychic overwhelm, of ancestral wounds passed down like haunted heirlooms. But from that fire, something ancient awakens the soul's instinct to unify what has been divided. The true empath is a bridge. Walker. A mystic, a carrier of myth and meaning. Someone who can hold the tension of opposites, the joy and the sorrow, the chaos and the calm, and not collapse. But that strength only comes after you stop leaking your power. You must become less available to the world if you wish to serve it truthfully. You must let go of being the rescuer. You must grieve the identity that was built around being indispensable. This is death. Yes, a death of the false self. But in that death, your real self begins to emerge slowly, wildly, authentically. And you will find perhaps for the first time a strange and terrifying peace, because peace for someone used to emotional chaos feels unto first. You may even miss the drama, miss the crisis, miss being the hero. These were your addictions. Let them fall away. You were never meant to be everyone's emotional shelter. You were meant to be your own temple. Let the world learn to hold itself for once. Let the takers find their own reservoirs. Let the narcissists implode without your light to stabilize them. And let yourself sit in silence without rescuing anyone. Only then will you feel it, the pulse of your own soul. It is subtle, at first, as oft echo beneath the noise, but if you listen, it grows louder. It tells you where to go, who to trust, what to say yes to, and what to walk away from. This is your empathic gift, finally returned to you, not as burden, but as compass, not as martyrdom, but as inner alignment. And here finally you begin to feel something unfamiliar yet undeniable joy. Not the joy that comes from pleasing others, not the high of being needed, but the quiet-rooted joy of simply being, of being whole, of being home in your own body. This is your inheritance. But first you must protect it. You must bless your light with structure. You must give your empathy the dignity of limits. You must surround your soul with the sacred architecture of number. Not now, not anymore. Because love without structure is chaos, and empathy without discernment is self-abandonment. So I leave you with this, not as an ending, but as a return. Return to yourself. Return to the light that does not beg to be seen. Return to the stillness beneath the giving. And remember, you are not here to absorb everyone's suffering. You are here to transmute it by embodying the